So in this video of Year 7 end of year non-calculated Mixsheet, we'll be going through a range of non-calculated questions. For access to the original worksheet for you to have a go at, feel free to click on the link in the description below. So with question 1, the topic that this question is related to is just arithmetic. So with question 1 and multiplying with decimals, so with A, what we need to do is work out what 34 times 58 is. And you can use any method you wish, whether it be the grid method or the column method or whichever method you seem to call it. But in other words, what you should have, if you've done it correctly, is an answer of 1972. Now, one thing you should be able to spot in the questions for B, C and D is that there's some similarity in the digits that's being used in the calculation that we've done for A. So in B, we've got 3.4 times 58. And we need to work out the answer. Now you could do this using the method that you've used for A and making sure that your decimal point is in the right place, or you can use estimation to try and figure out what the answer should be, which is not a bad idea. So in terms of using estimating, that we know that this is a number that's close to 3, that's a number that's close to 60, so 3 times 60 is 180. So what I need to do is put the decimal point somewhere in this number that gives me a number that's close to 180. However, if you want to do this a little bit more accurately, or another way of doing that, and there's no method there's nothing wrong with the way I've just showed you there, is recognizing that to get from 34 to 3.4, what I've done is I've moved the decimal point one place in that direction. So then for this, to make this smaller, so then what I then need to do is when I get the answer of 197.2 is I need to do the same to the final answer. So here I need to move the decimal point one place there, giving me an answer of 197.2. Now for C, I've got 0.34 times 5.8. So to get from 34 to 0.34, then what I've done is I've moved the decimal point 2 places in that direction, and to get from 58 to 5.8, I've moved it 1 place there, giving me a total of moving it 3 places to the left. So what I then need to do is move the decimal point 3 places in this direction. So if I move it 1, 2, 3, it means the decimal point is going to go there, and I get an answer of 1.972. Now recognise and see how I've not left my answer like this. It's always worth writing your answer neatly so that you haven't got any sort of loops or sort of curves or whatever you call it where you've moved the decimal point, and you certainly don't want to have your answer where you've got more than one decimal point. Now for D rather, now one thing we spot here is we need to work out what 68 times 58 is. Now we already know the answer of 34 times 58. Now if I put 68 in brackets, now how do we get from this number to that number? Well, all I need to do is times that by 2. So if I was to do 2 times 34, I would end up with 68. So if this answer here, I just use a different colour pen, so if this answer there is going to be 1972, then all I need to do is times that by 2, in which 1972 times 2 is going to give me 3944 as the final answer. So obviously with this you could have just done it in the same way as A, and it's all about however you see it, but sometimes you might get a question where you're asked to work out what A is and then it says hence, or using your answer for part A, using your answer in A, work out what B, C and D are, in which they'd want to see how you've manipulated your answer in part A to get those answers. Obviously if it doesn't mention that, you can just do it as per normal. Now for question 2, which is looking at shaded areas, now again these questions are very, very popular when it comes to exams and tests, etc. And then when we're working with shaded areas, it's important to recognise that with shaded areas, now in this question you should be able to see 2 shapes. Now I can see a rectangle and I can see a triangle. Now the shaded area will always tend to be the area of the big shape take away the area of the small shape. So in this particular question we've got that the big shape is the rectangle and the small shape is the triangle. So what I need to do is work out those areas separately. Now the area for the rectangle is going to be 10 times 6, which is 60. And the area of the triangle, which is base times height divided by 2, in which the base of that triangle is 7, the height of the triangle is 6, and I do 7 times 6 divided by 2 gives me 21. So the shaded area therefore is going to be 60 minus 21, which is going to give me 39 centimetre squared. So again, don't forget the unit, which is centimetre squared, because our dimensions are in centimetres. So moving on to question 3, which is volume. Now to work out the volume, what we need to do is recognise what shape it is first. So here we've got the volume of a cuboid, and to work out the volume of a cuboid, then all we need to do is multiply the 3 dimensions together. Now again, the first check you want to do is make sure the units of the dimensions are all the same, which in this case they are. So the volume is the length times the height times the width, or any basically 3 dimensions multiplied together. So the volume is going to be 11 times 7 times 2.5. Now again, depending on how comfortable you are with multiplying, so for this it's going to be 77 times 2.5. Now if you're not too sure, comfortable multiplying by 2.5, again you can kind of multiply 77 by 25 and then move the decimal point one place in, or what you could do is replace the 2.5 with 5 and then divide the answer by 2, because obviously 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, in which you get the exact same answer. So whichever method you choose, you should end up with the answer of 192.5 centimetre cubed, and that would be the volume of that. Now for question 4, it's a case of, and question 5, it's all about percentages and percentage increase. Now without a calculator, you could use a decimal multiplier depending on how comfortable you are with multiplying with decimals. It's entirely up to you. So with question 4, we need to increase 7,800 by 42%. So the first thing we need to do is work out what 42% is, in which 10% is going to be 780. So if we times that, so another 10%, 780, 10%, 780, 10%, 780, 1% is going to be 78, and another 1% is going to be 78, in which we could just add up all of those numbers. An alternate method is to do 780 times 0.42. You can work that out, i.e. and how we work that out is we can do 7,800 times 42, move the decimal point 2 places to get the answer of that, and then add it to 780. Or another alternative method you could do is 780 times 1.42, because the reason why it's 1.42 is with percentage increase, you always start with 100%. And if I add 42%, which is what I'm doing because I'm increasing, I end up with a total of 142%, and that as a decimal is 1.42. So it doesn't really matter which method you choose, and then add that to 780. You should end up with the same answer, which should be 11,076. And there you go. So that's another way of doing it. Now with question 5, which can be done in virtually the exact same way. So if I just get rid of all of this, I can show you the numerous ways. So like I said, there's never just one way of doing things in maths. Usually there is an efficient way. Obviously there's one way if you've got access to a calculator, but in this non-calculator task, that's not going to be in the question. So with question 5, so let's get to the pen. So we can either do, we're working out 54% of 340, so 10% is 34, which I need 5 of those. And the more you write, the more your handwriting goes a little bit wayward, and then I need 4 lots of 1%. Now this way is one way of doing it. I wouldn't recommend it if you're happy and know your decimal multipliers and working with that. So that's going to be 3.4. And again, my columns aren't that nice and easy because obviously it's going to be very easy for me to make a mistake. So all we need to do is add them up, and obviously add that to 340. So whatever the answer is, I'm going to add it to 340. An alternative method I could do is to do 340 times 0.54, or in other words, working out 340 times 54, move the decimal point 2 places from the answer, and that will work out what 54% is, and then add it to 340. Or the alternate way is to do 340 times 1.54. So again, in this you're going to do 340 times 154, and when you get your answer, move the decimal point 2 places from the right to the left, and you should get your answer. And that answer should be, if you've done it correctly, 523.60 pence. And again, don't forget the extra 0, because obviously it's dealing with money. Now question 6 involves long division. Now because we are dividing by 14, I'd probably strongly recommend that you start by writing the 14 times table up to 10. It shouldn't take you that long, so all you need to do to write down the 14 times table is add 4 and then add 10. It's a lot easier doing the units first rather than adding 10 than adding the unit. It's a little bit confusing. So if I add 4 and then add 10, I get 28. Add 4, add 10, get 42. Add 4, add 10, get 56. Add 4, add 10, get 70. Add 4, add 10, gets 84, and so on. And what I get is these numbers here. And so from you doing the 14 times table up to 10, it makes doing long division a lot easier using the bus stop method. So I'm going to do 14, and it's going to be divided by, I'm just going to make sure I'm adding lots of space between the digits that are going inside the bus stop, and excuse the non-straight line that I'm doing. So first things first, we're going to work out how many 14s go into 6. Well, that's 0, carry the 6. How many 14s go into 67? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, with a remainder of 11. So then I'm going to think, how many 14s go into 114? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with a remainder of 2. Then how many 14s go into 23? So that's 1 and just 1, with a remainder of 9. And then how many 14s go into 98? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with no remainders, giving us an answer of 4,817. Moving on to question 7. Now question 7, these questions again are becoming very, very popular. And how we need to do this is make sure that you're reading the question carefully, and that fraction does come into question. So from this particular one, so question 7, we know that 3/5 of a number is 144. Now what this means is that 3 parts equals 144. So if I do 144 divided by 3, that means that 1 part is going to be equal to 48. Now because I've got fifths, that means that the original number, so the original number, which is 5 parts, is going to be 48 times 5, which is 240. So the original number that we're looking at is 240, and what the question is asking me is to work out a quarter of 240, which in this case is going to be 60. Now for question 8, which is dealing with perimeter, so what we need to do is make sure that all the sides are labelled, and to work out the perimeter, all I need to do is add up the 4 sides of that rectangle. So it's going to be 5.8 plus 6.7 plus 5.8 plus 6.7, and if I add all of that up, I should get 25 centimetres, and again, don't forget the units. Now moving on to question 9, which is dealing with substitution algebra. So for this, it's also linking with BIDMAS as well, so it's always important that although it's an algebra, don't forget your BIDMAS. So with question 9, now it's worth just writing and emphasising what the letters are. So we've got A equals 3, B equals 4, and C equals 2. So for part A, what we want to work out is a squared plus b, which if we replace the letters with the numbers, that's going to be 3 squared plus 4, which is 9 plus 4, which gives me an answer of 13. For B, we've got 3a plus 4b, which is, and again, replace the numbers. Now, when you've got letters and numbers, I strongly recommend that you put brackets around the things that are being added or subtracted. And likewise with question A, that sometimes it's easy to recognise. Now, when you move up in your age and maturity in maths and your ability in maths, you won't need those brackets, you'll understand what it is. But as you're starting off, if you're getting confused or getting these questions wrong, I would certainly recommend putting brackets around them. So here what we've got, I'll change the colour of my pen, so we've got 3 times 3 plus 4 times 4, so that's going to be 9 plus 16, which gives me a final answer of 25. Now again, when you're doing with this, make sure that you only have 1 equals per line. I'm just writing 2 equals on per line because I'm obviously trying to save space on the screen, but generally what you would do is you'd write it underneath, because again, it's very good practice for you to only have 1 equal sign going through it. For C, we've got AB over C. So again, I'm going to put brackets around the two sides. And so what we've got is we've got 3 times 4 over 2, which is 12 divided by 2, which gives me an answer of 6. Now for D, we've got C minus AB. So again, if I put brackets around the AB, just to stop myself from getting confused, then what I've got is I'm going to end up with 2 minus, and then I've got 3 times 4, so that's going to be 2 minus 12, which gives me an answer of minus 10. Then for E, I'll just do in the space here, I've got 3a plus 5b minus 6c. So again, if I just put brackets around the letters and numbers that are being added, subtracted, I can work these out separately. So this then becomes 3 times 3, this becomes 5 times 4, and this becomes 6 times 2. And I work that out, I've got 9 plus 20 minus 12 gives me an answer of 17. And then finally for F, now I might struggle for space here, I've got 2a plus b. So c squared is going to be 2 squared times 2 times a, which is 4, plus b, which is 4. So I've got, sorry, that should be 6 over 4. I'll pretend that never happened. And then so what we've got is we've got 4 times 10, which gives me an answer of 40. So moving on with question 10, which looks at properties of angles around a point and in triangles. So with part A, we've got around a point, so we know that angles around a point add up to 360. So what we need to do is do 360, take away all the angles that we don't know, which is, this is going to be 90, so it's going to be 220, and then, now be careful in terms of what you're doing here, so we need to take away all those numbers there, and again what I don't want to do is sort of invalidate the answer by taking away those, and that will give me the value of x. And if you do that, so here what we've got is we've got 360 take away, and if I added those two numbers up together I'd get 310, so that will then just purely leave me with 50 degrees. Now for B, what we need to recognise is that these two angles are going to be opposite, so 80 degrees is going to be the same as those two things there added together. So what we've got is we've got x plus 53 equals 80, and again the reason why that is because opposite angles are equal to each other. So all I need to then do is do 80 minus 53, which is going to give me an answer of 27 degrees. Now for C, what we need to do here is we've got a triangle, and we've got an isosceles triangle, and we've got this point here. Now in order to work out what x is, I need to work out what these two angles here are going to be. Now because it's an isosceles triangle, those two red angles are going to be the same. So to work out this angle, now because it's on a straight line, all I need to do is 180 minus 115, which is going to give me an answer of 65 degrees. So if this angle there is 65, that angle there is going to be 65. So to work out what x is, what I need to do is 180 minus 65 minus 65, which is going to give me an answer of 50 degrees. Now with question 11, there is only 3 parts to this question. Just because there's empty lines doesn't mean that there's some questions missing, so try not to fall into that bracket. And this just involves converting improper fractions to mixed numbers and converting them into decimals. So first things first with regards to the first one. Now 4.25 is the same as, now 0.25 is something that you should recognise. That's just going to be 4 1/4. So the mixed number for this is going to be 4 1/4. Now to convert mixed numbers into improper fractions, now if I just use some algebra notation, so here the base number in this is going to be 4, b is going to be equal to 1, and c is going to be equal to 4. To convert it into an improper fraction, we multiply the big number by the bottom number, so it's a times c, and we add it to the top, and it's always divided by c again. So here what we're going to do with 4 1/4, it's going to be 4 times 4 plus 1 all over 4. So 4 times 4 is 16, plus 1 is 17 over 4. So the improper fraction of 4.25 is 17 over 4. Now for the second one, 32 over 5, now to convert that into a mixed number, we're basically going to ask ourselves how many 5s go into 32. That would be 6, with a remainder of 2, and we're going to go, and the original divisor or denominator is 5. So the answer to this is going to be 6 2/5. Now to convert this into a decimal, well, there's numerous ways you can do this. You can do 5 over 32. So how many 5s go into 3? 0, so we carry the 3. How many 5s go into 32? That would be 6. Now because rather than writing remains, we're going to add a 0, and which we add a decimal point, and I've got a remainder of 2. And then how many 5s go into 20? That's 4, giving us an answer of 6.4. Also, you can now recognise that 2/5 is the same as 4/10, which we know is 0.4. So either which way you want to do it is entirely up to you. Now for 5 3/4, if we follow this model, then to convert that into an improper fraction, we're going to do the big number divided by the times the bottom number, so that gives us 20. Add it to the 3, so that's 23 over 4. And then to convert this into a mixed number, into a decimal, well, we know that 3/4 is 0.75, so the answer to this is going to be 5.75. So the answer you should have, your missing numbers are like there that I've highlighted in this table. Now question 12 is what we call a reverse averages question. So this is when you're given the average and you need to work out what part of the question is. Now the key to this particular question is recognizing that the question consists of 2 parts, or 2 bits of information. Now the first bit of information says the mean of 5 numbers is 10. So you need to think of 5 numbers that when you add those 5 numbers, divide it by 5, the answer is going to be 10. So what divided by 5 gives you 10? Well, that means the total sum of all 5 numbers, must equal 50, because 50 divided by 5 gives you 10. Now if I add up the numbers I know, so if I do 12 plus 16 plus 4, that equals 32, and what that therefore means is that x plus y must add up to give me 18. Now the second part of this particular question, it tells me, is that x and y are prime numbers. So if I write down my prime numbers, I need to find which combination of 2 numbers adds up to give me 18, in which a combination is going to be 11 and 7 and 13 and 5. So x and y can be either of those 2 particular numbers. So for this, if x equals 11, y equals 7, or you could have x equals 7 and y equals 11, or you could have x equals 13 and y equals 5, or y could equal 5, sorry, x could equal 5, just get rid of that. And y would equal 13. So any of those 4 combinations would be good enough for your answer. Now for question 13, it's about algebraic pyramids, in which what you need to do is add up the 2 bricks below to give you the brick above. So here what I've got is, I'll just choose a more dominant colour. So I've got 3x plus 5x is 8x, and 6 minus 2 is positive 4. And then for this brick here, I've got 5x plus x, which is 6x, and minus 2 plus 13 is plus 11. And then for the top brick, all I need to do is add the 2 x's in the bottom 2 bricks below it. So 8 plus 6 is 14x, and 4 plus 11 is 15. Now for question B, it's about doing the reverse. So I want 5x, but I've only got 2x, so I need another 3x. I want 21, but I've only got 10, so I need to add 11. And then for the next brick, for this brick here, I want 3x and I've got 3x, so I don't need any x, so I can write 0x. I've got 11, but I've got minus 4, so I need to add 15. Now another way of writing this brick is just writing 15, which will be absolutely fine. So for this last brick, I want 2x, but I've got 0x, so I need another 2x. And I want 10, but I've got 15, so I need to take away 5. And that should be your completed 2 pyramids. Then for question 14, what we need to do is work with pie charts. Now this pie chart question combines an element of working out fractions and percentages. So the key thing to regards with working with pie charts is you need to work out the angles first. Now the total sum of angles in the pie chart has got to add up to 360. So to work out the actual angle for each of these particular 3 sections, so football is going to be 1/6 of 360. So if you do 360 divided by 6 times by 1, we get an angle of 60 degrees. Now for tennis, what we need to do is do 40% of 360. So that's going to be, and if 10% is 36, 40% is going to be 36 times 4, which gives me 144 degrees. And then for other, now if all the 3 angles have got to add up to 360, to work out other, all I need to do is do 360, take away 60, minus 144, which gives me 156. So the angles for each of these 3 sections are 60 degrees, 144 degrees, and 156 degrees, in which your pie chart should look something like this. So where this angle here is 60, this angle here is going to be 144, and this angle here is going to be 156. Now if you're not too sure about how to draw your pie chart, well, the most important thing is you start off by drawing a dot in the centre of your page, grabbing a compass, drawing an accurate circle like so. And if I just do now, because I'm using a computer, I have to do mine the opposite way to how you would do it. So you start off by drawing a dot in what you think is the centre, well, what should be the centre. The next thing you do is draw a straight line going from that centre right straight up as if it was at 12 o'clock, and then from this you then measure your angles using a protractor. So your first angle should be at 60 degrees. So again, if I just guess, it's going to be about there. Your next angle, so again, put 0 of your protractor, the centre protractor at the centre of the circle, 0 here, and then you're going to measure 144 degrees going that direction, which you should find is going to be roughly about there. And then just to double check, so that angle there is 60, that there is 144, and then if you check to make sure you've done it correctly, this angle there should be 156. And the last thing you then need to do is just label the sectors, either using colour and a key, or you can just simply label the sectors as they should be big enough. Now if you have any problems at all with the questions on this particular worksheet, feel free to drop me an email.